right? So if you're minimizing vacancy, the way to minimize vacancy means that your property is being occupied, right? So vacancy is your occupancy. Ideally, you will have 100% occupancy. Your property is fully rented out, or whatever is not occupied, that is your vacancy. Occupancy of 100% is unrealistic with any management strategy. Even for long-term rentals, you're estimating around an 8% occupancy, which means roughly 1 month of the year, the property is going to sit vacant. That's going to take, when tenant moves out, you're going to maybe have to fix the place up, find a new tenant, all that kind of stuff. That takes up to a month. My average occupancy for my properties are 3% or lower because I'm working to get like cleanings done and everyone to come in and get everything done like literally the same day the tenant moves out. So I'm coordinating, like where property management is coordinating with the tenants. And then secondarily, I'm pre-listing my properties. I'm not waiting till it's vacant to find another tenant. I am already finding tenants to move in literally the day or two after my previous tenant moved out. That's for long-term rentals. For short-term rentals, depending on the location that you're operating in, you're always going to have vacancy. You're going to have between 20% vacancy to maybe 40, 50% vacancy. It depends on your pricing strategy. One thought process is that if you have 100% occupancy, that's kind of bad. That means your price is too low. So you need to increase your pricing so you don't have 100% occupancy. If you do the math, a lot of times it's better to have a lower occupancy but at a higher rate. It's way easier and cheaper for you as the owner, and the returns are much higher, the profit or the return on investment for all the time and energy that goes into it. But so things that I use to minimize my vacancy in short-term rentals are, I don't think of a single property as just a short-term rental. My short-term rentals are mid-term rentals and rent by the room properties as well. So when I go into a property and I'm going to leverage it as a short-term rental, I'm also, for like rent by the room, you need to have distinct locks for each unit. So what I'm doing is I'm putting those locks in advance. So if I'm getting a property, that's like the first thing that we're going to do. We're going to put individual locks for the bedrooms that are like door codes. So if there's a seasonality, like I have properties that are very seasonal, and then some that are good, like my San Diego properties, they're rented out throughout the year. But then other properties, like a Montana one, it's like bi-seasonal. It's like bimodal. It's got like two distinct seasons. It's got like winter's great and then summer's great. But then the time in between is kind of the shoulder season, or it's slower. So instead of trying to rent a 5-bedroom house as a short-term rental in full, what we'll do is we will attempt to rent it out as a mid-term rental at a lower price, but for a longer stay during those shoulder seasons, or rent it out by the room. So maybe someone doesn't need a 5-bedroom, but there's plenty of people who are coming in for, getting ready for the winter season or just trying to enjoy the shoulder season. They're coming in and they are renting it out by the room. I don't underwrite or analyze for that additional income, but trust me, I'm happy and my partners are happy when we are increasing the income on a property. This is one of the ways that I do it. So I think of properties as either unfurnished or my long-term rentals, or furnished. And if it's furnished, then what I'm doing is I'm operating as a short-term, mid-term, or rent by the room. That's if it's a short-term rental. If it's a mid-term rental, same concept. It's going to be mid-term, short-term, or rent by the room, but there's not as much seasonality there. And I'm not really the expert in mid-term rentals. We leverage it. We implement it. I have maybe a dozen units that are mid-term rented. Most of them are just complementary to a short-term rental strategy, but it's not the main thing that I do. And then for co-living, for like that rent by the room, if it's a rent by the room property outright, I'm not going to try to fill it with short-term rental and all that. I will list my properties on short-term rental and mid-term rental platforms like Airbnb, like Furnish Finder, to fill in those rooms, the rent by the room, not just exclusive to Pad Split or Zillow or whatever. I'm going to try every single strategy to increase my occupancy, because every single unit that is vacant, that's money literally being lost. So you don't want your properties vacant. So list it and just understand that you can leverage more than one strategy for a property, but it has to be in alignment, right? And then understand that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like certain strategies make a lot more sense together. Just it needs to kind of make sense for you. And then maximizing tax savings. So cost segregation. That was one thing that was one thing that was added into the question. So I maximize tax savings a variety of ways. So first and foremost, if you are considered a real estate professional, let's just say like it's around 720 hours of your year, something like that, is being dedicated towards real estate. And that number of hours is greater than any other source of income. Like if I have a full-time W-2 job, it's hard to be considered a real estate professional. But if you work part-time or you have a spouse that is self-employed or is a stay-at-home mom. So like that's how my wife and I got those tax benefits. She was, we did the math. It made more sense for her to be a stay-at-home mom and actually just stay-at-home wife, I guess, and work on our business and then qualify our marriage as a real estate professional to get that benefit. What that means is we can offset literally all of the losses in real estate, all the losses on paper, including depreciation, interest payments. All those are losses on paper. It doesn't mean you're literally losing money. You can use that to offset all of your active income sources. So even while I was making solid income in a W-2, just a regular job, we were able to offset all of my federal and some of my state taxes, state specific. Not every state works that way, but I was able to offset all my income because my wife was deemed a real estate professional, and that made our marriage, we got to take advantage of that tax benefit. If that's not something you can do because you have a full-time job, another option is the short-term rental tax loophole, which means if you are providing like the most time and effort on that short-term rental, you are the one who is, let's say, managing it, right? You don't have it managed by someone else. You're managing it. You're dealing with the guests. Whatever you're doing, as long as you're doing the most amount of time and effort and it's at least 120 hours or more, you also get that same benefit, the short-term rental tax loophole for that one property, not for your collective, but for that property. You'd be able to offset all sorts of income because of losses on paper, the depreciation and interest payments, to write it off. Another strategy is cost segregation. So that was added in the comment. So basically cost segregation means you're going to it's more common in multifamily, like larger properties, because you have to pay money, you get an engineering report. It's not like crazy expensive for like, there's some desktop ones. It's like, they'll do it literally from a computer. You'll provide them information. You basically provide information like, what price did you buy it at? How much did you put towards renovations? What renovations did you do? How much of the property what did you furnish? How much did it cost? Basically all the costs that went into getting the property renovated, furnished, all that kind of stuff. You can leverage that as also tax benefits, like not just the real estate and depreciation on the property. You can depreciate and get tax benefits on the renovations and the furnishings as well. That's basically what cost segregation is. You cannot do that without the cost segregation. You need like an actual report done on that. For me, on a single family home, I don't know the exact price. I think last time we did it, which wasn't very long ago, it was between $1,000 to $2,000. So it's not like $10,000, maybe close to $1,500. And but just because you cost segregate does not mean you'll get to utilize that tax benefit unless you are a real estate professional or have the short-term rental tax loophole. That's why I prefaced it with all that information. So you might cost segregate and think you're going to get a bunch of tax write-offs, but it may not translate to anything outside of your real estate business. For some, that's more than enough, but real estate in and of itself ends up being pretty tax advantaged. Like there's really not a lot of taxes you have to pay, even when you're making money. All of my properties are making money and I still don't have to pay taxes on them because the depreciation is a loss on paper, right? Depreciation is essentially the IRS, the government says, we know your property is losing value. You ask anyone, anytime in the past, has your property lost value? No, it hasn't lost. It increases in value, but you're going to have to renovate things. You're going to have to, rebuild things. You have to replace roofs and all that. So when you're doing those things, they're saying, hey, it's deteriorating its condition. So we know we're giving you like this tax break for it. Basically, it takes the property value minus the land value. So you're only doing the property value. So whatever your tax assessment is minus the land value, right? It's the property value, and you get to basically write off 1 divided by 27.5. So basically they're saying, hey, over 27.5 years, that's the depreciation cycle. So you could take 27.5 of that one. Let's just say 1 divided by 27, because 27.5 is weird. Take 1 divided by 27. You can take that much off as tax benefits, as like depreciation. They can offset your income. And that is usually enough for a lot of people, depending on like your property size and value, to be able to write off most of your profits on real estate. If you're a real estate professional or have the short-term rental tax loophole, you can then also offset other sources of income, including, 6+ figures of active income from your job. If you have stocks and whatever, all your sources of income can be offset through that. It's literally actually insane, because my property is not only cash flow and I'm making money each month, my property is appreciating in value. Maybe not every month, but over longer time horizons, it appreciates on average 5%, right? That's like the historical average, 5% a year. My tenants are paying down my debts. All that's adding to my net worth. But then I also save money on taxes, not just on my real estate, but on my personal side too. It's actually mind-blowing. The advantages of real estate investing, that's why it is my absolute favorite strategy of investing, especially if I'm either actively involved with the deal and I'm getting great returns using my own money, or I'm using my money. If you're on my social media, if you're on Instagram, you just saw a 160 unit, $20 million property that I own with one of my mentors, Pace Morby. And I get passive income from that property, and I get tax benefits from that property because I'm an owner of that property as well. So like you can get it through active sources or passive sources, and you get much more benefits than just the monthly cash flow. You can't say the same for any other asset. Like stocks do appreciate in value, but that's really what you're getting. When you say 10%, it appreciates. Stocks on average gain like 10% year over year. That's the S&P 500, 10% year over year. Well, that's kind of the equivalent of what you're going to get in cash flow, 10 to 15% roughly. But then you get the property appreciating value. You get someone else is paying down your debts. The benefit for me is I'm using none of my own money to buy all these assets, which is insane. You can't do that with stocks. And I get tax benefits. There's no other asset that allows this kind of stuff. It's literally incredible. I can't even emphasize how much of a cheat code it is. And the government and the IRS, the tax rules, they all make it that way. They want you to invest because you're adding value to properties and whatever. I don't even know what the reason is. I'm thankful for it, and I'm not even going to complain about it. So I'm thankful for that. The other thing is about cost segregation and depreciation. If you pay for that report for the cost seg, and you can do something called an accelerated depreciation, which means instead of dividing 1 divided by 27 and a half, right, 27 and a half years, you can actually depreciate over a 5-year time span. So basically, what is 5 divided by 27 and a half? Like 6 times faster, roughly, you can depreciate that asset. If you get the real estate professional tax, if you're a real estate professional, like you qualify for those tax benefits, now you're offsetting huge, like much larger amounts of income. You're paying less tax because you're accelerating that appreciation. Instead of spreading out over 27 and a half years, it's over 5 years. Once again, you need to get a report for that, right? It also, once again, it doesn't make a lot of sense if you cannot benefit from that. If you can benefit from that, ask your CPA. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a real estate attorney. It's not tax advice, not real estate advice, or like legal advice. Talk to your professionals, please. If you need a referral, message me anytime. I will refer you to the professionals that I work with. If you're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for you, cool, work with them. If not, no worries. But just talk to the professionals. I'm not a professional. I just am a very successful real estate investor who doesn't have to pay any taxes and just keeps adding 1 to 2 properties a month. It's insane. The next part of this question, right? So we talked about the strategies to reduce vacancy, maximize tax savings. Well, how do I select markets for short-term rentals? I'm not the short-term rental guy. My friend Rob Abasola, he's a short-term rental guy. I pay to be in his mentorships and learn short-term rental stuff from him. I do have great short-term rentals. I have phenomenal, incredible short-term rentals. But I'm saying there's better people for like managing that type of property, or if you want to do like a ton of it, my main thing is co-living or rent by the room. That's what I can help you more than anything else. I can help you analyze rent by the room, right? Short-term rental, mid-term rental, long-term rental all day. But if you're asking me the best markets for short-term rentals and the best furnishings for a house, or should I paint this wall? I don't know. I don't even care. That's not part of my thing. I will outsource that to a designer, to professionals who do that day in and day out. My job is to find great deals, make sure they make sense, raise the money to buy them, and then ensure we're operating them successfully. I can help you with that all day. But just to give you insight into my strategy for choosing markets, I'm either choosing markets that are phenomenal locations, like this is a place that everyone wants to go to, like that, and there's not a lot of seasonality involved with it. Like San Diego is a phenomenal one. We have certain properties in North Carolina, South Carolina. There's just certain areas, especially coastal, which are phenomenal. And I have some in Alaska where I started investing. I bought those as long-term rentals, but then I furnished them and rented them as short-term rentals, and they crushed it. When I utilized tools like AirDNA to so there's the thing. If you want to choose a market, do you want to help choosing a market? Well, there's data sources. Just the same way we get rental comps and determine what the property's value is. AirDNA is a great tool that allows you to look at, okay, what is the average income in this market, right? Compare that to purchase price to see if that makes sense for you. They give you like reports on, hey, what are their top 100 markets to invest in? Leverage tools and data like that. But my thing is I'm only buying in phenomenal locations where people are going to all the time. They want to be in that location. So they're just renting my room as an alternative, or they're renting my house as an alternative to like a hotel, especially because I'm allowing much more people to stay there, right? So then they get it much cheaper and it's more enjoyable because they get the full kitchen and all that stuff. But it's either the location's phenomenal that people are always going to, or the house is a massive attraction. Like you're going because the house itself is just so sick you want to be there. That's another thing. A couple of my friends, Rob Basola, Kent He, they have these beautiful like bachelorette homes that are themed out and decked out, and pools and pool toys and murals and photo areas. Like the house itself is this massive amenity. The day of buying a 1 bed, 1 bath, 2 bed, 1 bath, simple property, just anywhere and short-term renting it is dead. That worked really well. Everyone is making money doing that in 2020, 2021, even 2022, when they changed the algorithm and then people's interest rates went up, people's spending power went down. There's no more free government money, right? That stopped working very well. So you really need great locations or great properties. Doesn't mean you cannot make random, simple, mediocre style properties, mediocre locations work. That doesn't mean that you can't. I'm not going to bet and put money into investments that are then higher risk because I'm just trying to like bet on something that isn't necessarily proven. But that's how I choose mine. Phenomenal location, or the property is going to be this, like, I have to go there. Like, I really want to go there. I want to hang out on that property, especially if you combine that, like my San Diego, we have a $2 million, like literal, like castle. It's beautiful. Well, not a literal castle, but it's got a castle vibe to it. It's a phenomenal location, San Diego, huge house, sleeps like 30 plus people. And the house itself is like got an awesome game room, multiple hot tubs. It's got like 6 different bedrooms and bathrooms, like luxury, like all this amazing stuff. If you're following me on social media, you would have seen that we just did a huge meetup there for real estate investors. And anyone watching this, you're always welcome to any of the meetups and all that stuff that I do. So just keep tracking me on social media. Let's drop that in here. Keep tracking me, at least on Instagram, if you want to know what is coming up, what am I doing, how can you be part of those things. But that's it. That's how I choose where I'm buying, if I'm buying any short-term rentals. And just to give you one final point on this, I'm only buying like 1 short-term rental for every 10 rent by the room properties that I buy. Just to give you like a ratio roughly, short-term rental is not my main thing. It's cool. I like owning properties that are cool to go visit and hang out in and all that. But I'd rather rent someone else's and then make a bunch of money doing the co-living strategy or the rent by the room strategy.